Good morning. I'm Brian Koziel, the Executive Director of the Virginia Housing Alliance. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff of VHA, I'm pleased to officially welcome you to the 8th Annual Virginia Housing Credit Conference. At VHA, our mission is to expand housing opportunity and end homelessness throughout the Commonwealth. This conference moves us closer to fulfilling this mission by bringing together tax credit professionals from across Virginia and beyond to discuss latest trends and best practices. I think it's safe to say that there has never been a time in which the need for affordable housing has been greater than it is right now. I remember back in January sitting in a committee room at the General Assembly and reading an article about this virus that had just been discovered. I remember being slightly alarmed, but generally not overly concerned. And I certainly didn't imagine the untold ways in which all of our lives would change just a few weeks later. For a lot of us, this change was just a disruption. We suddenly had to manage childcare or setting up a home office while trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. I didn't lose my job or have to continue to work in fear of getting sick or infecting an elderly parent or worrying about losing my home. I have a home, a job, and the ability to isolate and continue to earn a living. The one constant for me throughout the past 9 months has been the knowledge that my personal inconvenience is trivial compared to far too many other people. And the work that we do at the Alliance has gained a renewed sense of urgency. Fast forward to the summer as the wave of civil unrest calling for racial equity and social justice swept across the country, I was again reminded of the importance of our work. The critical need for affordable, safe housing has been lifted to the forefront of our collective conversation, and it is incumbent upon all of us to respond accordingly. I'd like to just take a moment to reflect on what VHA has accomplished over the past year. Through our advocacy efforts, we sent legislators over 6,000 emails and acquired 365 new affordable housing advocates across the state. We helped secure an additional $78 million in funding for the Housing Trust Fund, worked to maintain funding for permanent supportive housing, worked to secure $3.3 million in funding for the state's eviction prevention program, helped pass housing protections based on sexual orientation, gender identity, source of funds, and veteran status. We also had the great privilege of being able to award $150,000 in grants to nonprofit organizations across Virginia to respond to the immediate needs of low-income Virginians during the first few months of this pandemic. We also managed 12 AmeriCorps Vista members at housing organizations across the state to help build internal capacity. Last year, these Vista members were responsible for leveraging $1.5 million in cash resources through 48 new grant opportunities, recruiting 428 community volunteers, and serving 850 new clients. If you'd be interested in becoming a Vista host site, you can find all of the information on our website. Applications for the coming year are due at the end of this week. This coming year, we hope to build on this work and protect and expand the Housing Trust Fund, increase funding for permanent supportive housing, create a state affordable housing tax credit, and find other avenues through which we can further increase access to affordable housing throughout the Commonwealth. I'd like to take a moment to recognize VHA's Director of Operations, Brianna Pitchford. Bree just celebrated her 1-year anniversary at VHA and has now planned 2 virtual conferences, and she swears that this will be her last. Bree is responsible for the vast majority of the logistics that have gone into today and tomorrow, while keeping the ship pointed in the right direction on a daily basis. Thank you, Bree. And last but certainly not least, I need to send a sincerest thanks to VHA board member and Conference Planning Committee Chair Eric Hoffman. Eric is the driving force behind this conference and is one of those people who's in a perpetually good mood. He's a constant cheerleader, a tireless champion of the Virginia Housing Alliance, and advocate for social justice and racial equity. Eric, all of us are here today in large part due to your efforts, and I cannot begin to thank you enough. I also want to recognize that this is a particularly busy time for most of you, and thank you for spending the next 2 days with us. I hope you find the conference informative and insightful, in the format not overly burdensome. I know a lot of us are pretty much over Zoom at this point. And now, finally, I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of Virginia Supportive Housing and VHA's Board President, Allison Bogdanovic.
Thank you, Brian, and please accept my congratulations to you and Bree for launching our first ever virtual tax credit conference. Good morning, I'm Allison Bogdanovic, Virginia Housing Alliance's board chair and director of Virginia Supportive Housing. For many of us, 2020 has been a year focused on staying home, on finding innovative solutions that benefit our community and sustaining ourselves and our relationships in a perilous time. These themes have always been integral to our work in housing. Let's call it the power of home, a mission that is both timely and enduring. The need is greater than ever for organizations like the Alliance to inform, connect, and influence housing policy. If you are not a member of the Alliance, please consider becoming a member today. Now please join me in recognizing our event sponsors. Without our sponsors, we would not be able to host this conference. We would especially like to recognize our keynote sponsor for their support. Our keynote sponsor, again this year, is Truist. We are incredibly grateful for your support and continued partnership.
Hello, my name is Mark Johnson, Vice President and Community Development Manager for Truist Financial in the Virginia East region. Congratulations to the Virginia Housing Alliance for its development and presentation of the 2020 Housing Credit Conference. BB&T and SunTrust, now Truist, is proud to be a sponsor of this annual Housing Credit Conference. Over the past 3 years, through one of its community investment entities, Truist Community Capital has provided over $52 million in LIHTC equity investments to affordable housing projects in Virginia. BB&T and SunTrust announced the completion of its merger of equals on December 6, 2019, to form Truist. As a part of the merger, Truist committed to a community benefits plan to lend or invest over $60 billion to low and moderate income borrowers in LMI communities over 3 years from 2020 to 2022. As a part of the plan, Truist will distribute $120 million in qualified grants. This philanthropic giving will support a variety of organizations and purposes, but will primarily focus on 4 philanthropic pillars: affordable housing, essential community services, small business access to capital, and workforce development. At Truist, our purpose is to inspire and build better lives and communities, promoting financial inclusion, increasing economic resilience, and building community strength are priorities for us in ways we can fulfill our purpose. We believe extending credit and financial services to low-income populations and small businesses to help promote financial literacy creates opportunities that support the growth of communities and enhances social capital. Thank you again for providing Truist with an opportunity to sponsor the 2020 Virginia Housing Credit Conference. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you, Mark. We would also like to thank our signature sponsors, Virginia Community Development Corporation and Virginia Housing. We are grateful for your continued support and partnership. Now we'd like to recognize our silver sponsors, Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, Dakota Partners, SC&H Group, Klein Hornig, SCG Development, SL Nussbaum Realty, the Lawson Companies, TM Associates Management, and Town Bank. Thank you to our silver sponsors. Now we would like to recognize our bronze sponsors, Applegate and Thornton, Bank of America, Bercadia Commercial Mortgage, Community Housing Partners, Dominion Due Diligence, Dooley and Vickers, Highland Commercial Mortgage, the Michaels Organization, Morgan Keller Construction, National Equity Fund, LISC, Reno and Kavanaugh, Southway Builders, Urban Core, Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, Williams Mullen, and Woda Cooper Companies. Thank you to all of our bronze sponsors. To our sponsors and conference attendees, thank you for your commitment to housing. Today, as we come together to strategize and learn more about low-income housing tax credits, the most important resource we have for creating affordable housing in the United States, we demonstrate the value and importance of organizations like the Alliance to educate, inform, connect, and influence our industry. Please consider joining me in becoming a member of the Alliance by visiting our website, vahousingalliance.org. Now I'd like to introduce Eric Hoffman of Klein Hornig, a fellow Alliance board member and chair of the conference planning committee. Eric?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Wish I could be with you all. My name is Eric Hoffman. I'm a partner at Klein Hornig. I am a member of the board of the Virginia Housing Alliance, and I am the chair of the Housing Credit Committee, Planning Committee, which is a really long name, but we affectionately refer to ourselves as the Calypso Committee, and it's a ragtag, wonderful bunch of people that I'm going to introduce in a second. Brian, first, thank you for your kind words. They did make me cry. Everyone who knows me knows I'm a crier, and I always cry when people say nice things about me because that's pretty unusual. But thank you very much for your kind words. This has been a tough year. I mean, 2020, let's face it, 2020 has sucked. It's been a terrible year. It's been a terrible year for all of us. You know, working from home is a challenge for all of us, dealing with all of the loss, of course, but with a little bit of levity, some of the challenges of working at home. And it seems like every day the dishwasher is full. You empty it, you leave the room, you come back, the dishwasher is full. If you've got a teenager at home, all you hear all day is there's no food in the house. And if you're on a planning committee with me, the folks at the Calypso Committee, you have to deal with somebody who is got all of the Zoom skills of an octogenarian and seems to almost every week forget how to turn on his volume or his camera or get in on time. So I appreciate your indulgences, but we made it through, right? We did it somehow after canceling the conference and rescheduling the conference and dozens of meetings on Zoom. We pulled this off, and it's going to be a great, great conference. We are going to do what we have done in the past in a way to make this one-stop shop of information for the development community in Virginia. We're going to start really big, and Danushka Nanayakara is going to give a presentation about the economy, and particularly about not affordable, but multifamily housing in Virginia, so you get a sense of where we are and where we may be going. We're going to follow that up quickly with a federal panel to talk about what may come with the new administration. It's going to be great. And then we're going to quickly move to the states. We're going to have a part one of the state. It's kind of going to be a little bit different from prior years, where day one, Susan Dewey, who is the CEO of Virginia Housing, and I like to call her the mother of dragons and the breaker of chains. She'll be presenting about what's been going on at Virginia Housing. And on day two, we'll have part two of what's the state of the state with Eric Johnston, the more accomplished Eric with a K, presenting on all the amazing stuff that he, Pam, and Willie and others at DHCD have been doing for the people of Virginia. Right after the state of the state, we'll get JD Bondurant, who will give us a little update on what's been going on in Virginia in the credit program. And he will lead us on the state of the market with a discussion with some of our larger investors, direct and syndicator investors, to talk about what's going on the state of the market. And then we'll, on day two, have all of those programs that are going to be addressing this incredible pivot you and we have made in the last year, pivots to protect people and our projects and the pipeline and the future of these projects. And I got to say, we could not have done any of that without this amazing planning committee, the Calypso Committee. And I want to acknowledge them. And I'm sorry to read some of these names out, but I got to do it. First, I want to acknowledge that JD Bondurant, Stephanie Flanders, and Willie Fobbs, they must be in thousands of Zooms every month. They've committed to this. They've been a part of this planning committee for VHA and the Housing Credit Conference for years. And we could not do this without them. We're just immensely grateful for them. Others on the committee, Orlando Artsy of Orlando Artsy Consulting. He's also the vice chair of the Virginia Housing Alliance, and he was one of the catalysts for the COVID Council. He's really behind the scenes on so much for VHA. Jennifer Berger of Dominion Due Diligence, who's probably the person I will miss most being in person with, for the happy hour after the first day of the session when normally we all get together. Kate Bowers at Mosley Architects, Samantha Brown at CHP, who could be a bundler for the DNC. She really did phenomenal work bringing fundraising home for VHA. Mike Chiappa of APA, Noah Hale of TM Associates, Eileen Jackson of Williams Mullen, Ryan Johnson of Astoria, my brother of another mother, Camilla McAfee of Wesley Housing Development Corporation, Derek Perkins of Bank of America, also on the board of Virginia Housing Alliance, Bob Newman of VCDC, Dan Tater of KHEC, and Erica Sims of Housing Forward Virginia. Thank you, Calypso Committee. Can't wait to see you guys very soon. Those folks, all of those organizations gave money to Virginia Housing Alliance and the Housing Credit Conference, but what they gave, which was much more valuable clearly in these times, was their time. And we're deeply appreciative of that. And I will say, for those of you out there, you know, it's a tough time to ask for money for folks, but many of you have given or have kept up your memberships, and we're deeply appreciative. For those of you in the development community, there is a way to actually give money without actually giving money, believe it or not. So if you have affordable housing projects, we have a partnership with Stewart Title for Virginia Affordable Title Services, that if you record your deal with them and close your deal with them, half of the proceeds, the net proceeds, comes to Virginia Housing Alliance. And it's on the website. If you just go to the Virginia Housing Alliance website under About, you'll see Virginia Affordable Housing Title Services. It's easy peasy. Tim Akers and his team, Mary, it's fantastic people to work with. We close deals with them. We closed a $100 million deal in Henrico County last year with them. Better Housing Coalition, CHP, VCDC. Check them out. It is a way to give to VHA to make sure that they can support all of us and what we do without having to give anything. So please check it out. Speaking of giving, I have the immense pleasure and honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Mark Johnson. Truly an amazing person. Mark Johnson is the Vice President and Community Development Manager at Truist Bank. He is the catalyst in Hampton Roads, and he is in charge of all their community development activities there. And I'll tell you, if you read off his bio, like I had to print it in like 6-point font, and all of these highlights are all of these awards that Mark has accumulated and accolades over the years. And I swear you know, he must be 700 years old. He must be like Yoda with all that he's accomplished. And it's amazing list of awards. And I won't read them, but it really is an extraordinary list that shows what an amazing banker he is. But when you talk to him, which I got to do yesterday, and unfortunately many of you won't get to do because of this conference, but next year you will. But if you talk to him, or if you troll him on the internet like I did, what you realize quickly is not only is he an exceptional banker, but he's a good man. He's a really good man. When you talk to him about all of the awards and things that he wanted to highlight in this presentation, he wouldn't want to talk about that. He wanted to talk about his team at Truist and how deeply important they are to him, and the trust he has in them, and the way he respects their expertise. And I got to tell you, we work with Truist all the time. They're just an exceptional syndicate investor. We work with Steve Smith and Glenn Hatton, and I get what he's talking about, that these people, what he says, it's in the end, we talk a lot about the programs and the projects and the financings, and all of that has to go into those to get to closing. But what he wanted to kind of highlight, Mark Johnson wanted to highlight, is that it's the relationships that are the foundation of all those things, that they never happen without a relationship. And he really wanted to underscore that we always talk about relationships and negotiations and things like that as a soft skill, but it's really a hard skill in our industry. And like no other industry and no other community, in affordable housing, the ability to have strong relationships is everything. And I really commend Mark and the whole team at Truist for having that as their foundation. And I do want to say one other quote I found in his articles. And by the way, just Google his name. It's kind of amazing. Like the stuff that we're dealing with now that is new information, like health and housing, or food deserts and housing, or racial inequity issues. If you Google his name, you'll find that he's been working on these issues for over a decade. So he clearly is not just a catalyst, but he's on the vanguard of a lot of these issues. And one of the things that he said that I think is really apropos for us all today is the jobs that we've got in this world in affordable housing. It's important that you sharpen your saw every day. And you guys know that I'm a very soft-handed lawyer who only touches pencils. But I will talk to him about what that means. And like, if you have certain jobs where you're working every day, cutting trees, you have to keep your saw sharp. And that is why we're all here. These next 2 days is about sharpening your saw so you can go out and do your job better. And I just hope for all of us next year when we're meeting in person and get to hug, I'm going to hug all of you twice, that Mark is with us, because we all need to get a little bit of wisdom from him, but we'll get a little bit of it right now. Thank you all. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Truist, for your incredible support.
Sorry about that. Mark is having a little bit of difficulty with technology, which I'm sure we can all relate to. So we'll just give him another few seconds to join.
Can you hear me? Excellent. Great. Eric, can you hear me?
You are good to go.
Excellent. Thank you. Technology. We gotta live with it and hopefully never live without it. Hey, Eric, thanks so much for that wonderful presentation in terms of presenting me. I really, really thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and welcome all of you to the Virginia Tax Credit Conference. Truist has been a proud sponsor of the Virginia Housing Alliance way before either of us merged. If you know, we merged with BB&T on December 6th. 2019. So our birthday is coming up, or I'm sorry, December 7th. So we're really, really excited. We're proud to be a sponsor of the annual Housing Credit Conference, and over the past 3 years, through one of our community investment entities, Truist Community Capital, we provided over $52 million in LIHTC, and that's low-income housing tax credit and equity investments to affordable housing projects throughout the state of Virginia. And then just also wanted to reinforce as a part of our purpose that we, inspire and build better lives and communities. And We promote financial inclusion, increasing economic resilience, and building community strength are our priorities for us and ways that we can fulfill this purpose throughout all of our footprints. But I know all of you are here this morning to hear our keynote speaker, and so am I. It's my privilege to welcome Danushka Nanzakara Skillington. I got it. As this year's keynote speaker, Danushka is Assistant Vice President for Forecasting and Analysis for the National Association of Builders. She oversees the activities of forecasting analysis section of the economics group, which includes housing market analysis, industry surveys, developing and maintaining national, regional, long-term, and remodeling expenditure forecasts. Before being promoted to assistant vice president, she worked at NAHB as a senior economist responsible for state and local analysis. Prior to joining NAHB, Danushka worked at JD Power as a senior economic analyst in the automotive industry. She holds a BA degree in economics and business administration from Otterbein University and an MA degree in applied economics from Johns Hopkins University. I bring to you today, and again, it's my warm welcome to Danushka Sakara Skillington.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. So my presentation, I'm going to break it into 4 sections, give a little bit of an outlook about what's going on the macroeconomy, talk about housing demand, housing supply, and bring everything together with our forecast and some of the trends that we expect for the next couple of years. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat box, and I'll have a few minutes at the end to answer, or you can always shoot me an email. My contact information will be in the last slide. All right, so let's get started. First up is a GDP growth rate. So the third quarter GDP was insane, and I'm saying it I'm not even exaggerating here. So the GDP rose 33%. That's the annualized rate in the third quarter. Yes, I know we do annualize the growth rates, by the Bureau of Economic Analysis does that. But this is the fastest growth rate on record since the GDP was first tracked since 1947. So what contributed to the growth was increase in personal consumption expenditures, private inventory investments, non-residential and residential fixed investments, and exports. So the economy, we do think, with the recession, 2020 will be a negative 3.6%. And in 2021 and 2022, the growth rate should be around just under 3%. And, if you look at the long-term average, it's at 3.4%. So it will be less than that, but I think it is pretty solid for the next couple of years. One thing I do want to point out is that this forecasting right now, it's kind of hard because this is not a normal recession. A normal recession is caused by an imbalance in the economy, like the credit bubble or the housing bubble that we saw in 2008. So a recovery from a normal downturn kind of follows a standard path. And this recession is caused by a public health policy. So it is a highly uncertain economic environment right now. So when we look at GDP broadly, and we can break it into 3 sections, services, goods, and structures. So the GDP data actually shows resilience with consumer spending. They're spending less on services right now, but more on goods, especially durable goods. And the structures have gotten back to trend thanks to housing. And you can see that the service sector is hurting as expected. I know I'm not the only person who has cut down on eating at restaurants, but we are cooking more now. So you can look at just the data on grocery sales and restaurant sales. During the recession, the shutdown months, restaurant sales just plummeted and grocery store sales increased, and actually it's above trend. And I think, with the winter months coming, we can expect that the grocery store sales to continue to be higher than restaurant sales. Of course, especially in the colder states, it's not possible to eat outside anymore. So that kind of gives you the idea about the GDP data. And looking at the labor market, so the non-farm payroll employment rose by 638,000 in October, and the unemployment rate fell to little under 7%. Although we think that the actual rate may be somewhat higher because of the technical issues with the household survey. On our forecast, we think the unemployment rate will be around 7%. And why this is important is, if somebody is unemployed for less than 6 months, we don't really see much difference in their consumer spending patterns. But if an individual is unemployed for more than 6 months, it takes the spending to get back to trend. And why is this important? Because 70% of GDP is consumer spending. So it depends on how long somebody is unemployed. Otherwise, they'll have to dip into their savings. So it is really important that we get help for the unemployed. Looking at the employment data in Virginia and in Richmond, so the private firms in Virginia added 9,200 jobs in September. So the most jobs were added in leisure and hospitality and in professional and business services. These few sectors added 5,400 jobs to the economy. So on a year-over-year basis, I'm sure it's no surprise that Virginia employment fell by over 200,000 jobs. Interestingly, every sector lost jobs except construction. And I think you know why, because housing has been incredibly resilient. And the unemployment rate in Virginia is at 6.2%, and in Richmond, it's a little bit higher at 6.75. In Virginia, the unemployment rate, if you compare to a year ago, it's actually 3.5 percentage points higher. But overall, I think Virginia and Richmond metropolitan area has better employment stats than compared to the rest of the country. Moving on to monetary policy, the Fed fund rate is currently at 0 to 0.25%. So overall, the Fed has done a great job responding to this crisis by providing various avenues to access liquidity, including cutting interest rates to near zero. And they have created an incredible amount of credit programs to promote lending to households, businesses, and state and local governments, including large-scale asset purchases. Basically, what this means is we don't have a liquidity crisis right now. Last point I want to show you on monetary policy here is the mortgage rate, the 30-year mortgage rate. So this is kind of looking at the next 2 years. We do expect the 30-year mortgage rate to stabilize under 3.5%. However, we are in a recession, so the credit conditions are tightening. So lower rates will only help buyers who are confident to buy in this environment and has good credit and also has money for a down payment. All right, moving on to housing demand. I put the population here first because population growth is a primary driver for housing demand. So in addition to the economy being in a recession, slowing population also puts limit for expansion for rental and for sale housing. So growth in the US resident population in 2019 was 0.5%. That is the lowest since 1930s. Virginia as a state is actually even a little bit lower than that, but Richmond is actually growing faster compared to the overall state and the US. So I think the metropolitan area is actually growing. That also means good for the housing market in the area. Home ownership rate, the peak was in 2004 at 69.2. We had significant home ownership gains in the third quarter. So the third quarter is at 67.4, especially among the young households headed by young adults under 35. But the magnitude of the home ownership gains, both nationally and in all age groups, is surprisingly large. And I think it reflects data collection challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I won't be surprised if actually these numbers go down a little bit. Housing affordability is a big topic, and we measure that at NHB by the NHB Wells Fargo Housing Opportunity Index. So despite historic record low interest rates, the supply shortage, I'm sure you all have heard about this, there's not enough housing to meet the demand, and the rising home prices have contributed to a decline in housing affordability. So the house price is actually rising faster than household income. So the third quarter, the HOI came in at 58 across the country. So what does this mean, right? Only 58% of new and existing homes are affordable to a typical family earning the median income of $73,000. And also from the HOI, we have seen that the national median home prices also have jumped to a record $313,000 in the third quarter from $300,000 in the previous quarter. So when we look at year over year, the HOI has really not changed much. And this shows that the home buyers continue to face ongoing challenges in terms of limited inventory, and especially among the starter homes for the prospective first-time home buyers. So what does this mean? This means it's put upward pressure on rental demand, and there is a need for more affordable rental housing as a result. So we do this index on metropolitan areas, and in Richmond, it is at 77. So that means 77% of new and existing homes are affordable to a typical family in the area. So when you look at the national numbers, I think affordability is an advantage for Richmond. Existing home sales, this is single family existing home sales. So currently it is over 6 million for October. And when you take total existing home sales, that means condos and townhomes and everything together, co-ops, it rose over 4% to a 6.85 million in October. And that's the highest level since November 2005. On a year-over-year basis, sales are up a staggering almost 27% higher than a year ago. And the unsold inventory represents only 2.5 months supply. So like a 6-month supply is what we consider a balanced inventory level. So right now what this means is this is really pushing up the prices. And this is for existing home sales, and this is for new home sales. So new home sales came right just under 1 million in October. And compared to a year ago, the October rate is 41% higher than a year ago. So housing demand is off the charts right now because of the low interest rates and a renewed focus on the importance of housing. I think the COVID has really spotlighted the need for housing. And the current month supply is at 3.3 months. And right now, only 44,000 completed ready-to-occupy homes are available across the country right now. So most of these sales are coming from houses that haven't even started construction yet. Yeah, it's pretty crazy when we think about what happened in 2008 and prior. This is a total different time period right now for housing. Last point I want to show on the housing demand is the house prices. Like I said, affordability has declined because of the house price increase. So the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller Price Index increased almost 6% in August. So the year-over-year increase is largely driven by the unbalanced supply and demand. And in Virginia, the house prices has appreciated almost 5% since last year. We don't expect big price declines like during the Great Recession because of the housing shortage and the high demand. So as long as the demand is high and the supply is low, home prices will continue to increase. So we've covered macroeconomy, housing demand. Then I'm going to talk about the supply side. So this is what the builders are saying the biggest challenges that they are facing. And if you had tried to do any remodeling, make a build, renovated your deck or try to put up a fence this summer, I think you would have come across the lumber issue. So in April, price per 1,000 board feet of square foot lumber was approximately $350. And look at the September. The peak was at $955. Right now, it has fallen to $550, but it is considerably higher compared to what we've seen earlier this year. So on the supply side, the price hike was mainly because of the shutdown and the slow reopening of the country's lumber mills and the wildfires in the West Coast. And another factor is the tariffs on the Canadian lumber. So it has added an average of more than 20% to the price of Canadian lumber shipments coming to the US. So the futures market do suggest that the prices will level off, but domestic production is still down. So short supply means higher prices as well. So the labor issue has been persisting for the last few years. I would say at least for the last 5 years, because we consistently had job openings. So in September, there were 229,000 open jobs in construction. That's the blue line here. That's the job openings rate. So when I say construction, this includes residential and non-residential. And the red line here is just to smooth out the jaggedness. So it's like the 12-month moving average. So a year ago, there were 333,000 open jobs. So compared to a year ago, it is lower, but still there's over 200, like almost 230,000 open jobs right now. In April, the industry lost about 450,000 jobs, but have gained about 80% of it back. And the construction sector layoff also has been low since May. In April, the layoff rate was at almost at 11%. And in September, it's under 1.5%. So in our surveys, also builders are continuing to say that they are having issues accessing skilled labor, and they have plenty of construction projects and remodeling projects. This is construction sector productivity. That's captured by the red line. It has continued to decline in the last few years. The blue line is the overall worker productivity for the entire economy. So one of the reasons that the construction sector productivity is going down is the fact that the older workers are retiring. So the younger workers have less experience, so they take more time to do the work. So the productivity is going down. So this is an area where we expect that the system-built housing to actually improve productivity. In 2000 and in 2011, almost 5% of the multifamily buildings were built using modular and panelized construction methods. But in 2019, the share has gone down to only 1%. So only 1% of the multifamily properties were built using system-built housing. So we were expecting that the share to actually go up, but it's been going down. So this is where I think the system-built housing can take an advantage to increase productivity. So lumber, labor, and then lending. Lending is a third issue that I want to highlight here. So this chart here captures the Senior Loan Officer Opinion Survey on bank lending practices, and that's the blue dotted line, and the red line is the NHB survey. Positive numbers here means lending is tightening. To look at the time period between the Great Recession and now, the 2020 time period. And the negative numbers is what we are looking for. That means less restrictions on lending. So that is where the AD&C loans are expanding. So when I say lending, it is twofold, right? On the consumer side, it's the mortgages. So for the builders, it is the acquisition, development, and construction loans. So from our survey, 51% of the builders were saying they are having issues accessing financing. And it is important to note because 75% of home building is done by small builders. So they do need access to financing in order to continue with their projects. Last point I want to show is the regulatory cost. When we take a share of a multifamily development cost, regulatory cost on average accounts for 32%. So if you break that down, almost 7% is the cost increases from changes to building codes over the last 10 years. Almost 6% is the development requirements that goes beyond the ordinary. Almost 4% is a fees charged when building construction is authorized. Another 4% is the cost of applying for zoning approval. And 4.2% is a fees charged when work site begins. 2.3% is the cost of complying with OSHA requirements, and almost another 5% is the other cost. So that's the average. And the lower quartile could be as, the share cost can be as low, when I say low, is almost at 22% and could get high as almost 43%. So it is a broad range, but regardless, the regulatory costs are a big burden for the multifamily developers. All right, hang in there with me. We are going on to the last section. We've covered the macroeconomy, housing demand, housing supply, and I wanted to give you what the construction outlooks look like. Before I move on to the multifamily starts forecast, I do want to show you the NHB Multifamily Production Index. This measures the builder and the developer sentiment about the current market conditions in the apartment and the condo market. So this is an index on a scale of 0 to 100. So a number below 50 indicates that the more respondents are saying that the conditions are getting worse, and above 50 means that the conditions are improving. So confidence in the market for multifamily increased in the third quarter. However, it still remains in the negative territory at 48. So in the second quarter, it was at 37, and the first quarter, it was at 27. So it has increased, but it is still in the negative territory. So how we do the measurement here is we take an average of 3 key elements on the multifamily market: construction of low rent units, market rate units, and for sale condominiums. So all 3 components post an increase in the third quarter. However, it's still in the negative territory. Just looking back at the data, how 2019 ended, multifamily construction was incredible. The year ended at the seasonally adjusted annual rate of 540,000 units, and it peaked in 2019. And this is where we are right now in October. It is at 351,000 units. So you can look at the line, the 2019 peak, sharp drop in the first quarter and the second quarter because of the shutdowns. And it has rebounded a little bit, but has now plateaued. So because of this is what we are showing, that we are thinking for our forecast. So 2019 was the peak so the year ended, the rates were at, 7% increase over 2018 numbers. 2020, we think it will be around 3% decline. And 2020 to 2021, a sharp decline, if you notice. It's 14% decline. And we do think the market will cool down because the data show that, increases evictions and more people not being able to pay rent. But we do think that the market trend for apartment construction in the outlying areas and return to trend after a vaccine, hopefully after the second and the third quarter next year. And we do think that the rental market may also get a boost from the rising home ownership rate. So the pandemic led many older millennials to purchase their first homes, and it limited the supply of single-family homes, and it increased prices. So this could lead many, particularly within, the first-time home buyers, to stay renting longer. So we are, of course, always, keeping up with the trends. So we revise this forecast every month. So right now we are comfortable with where we are right now. Hopefully the vaccine will get deployed effectively and safely next year, and then we can go back to trend in 2022. At NHB, we put out all sorts of indexes and data. So this is the home building geography index. How we put together is we look at permit data at the county level, and we aggregate it according to population. So COVID-19 it's not a surprise to anyone, had large impacts on higher density neighborhoods. So majority of the multifamily construction takes place in large metro core and suburban counties. So we define a large metro area as with the areas with more than 1 million people. So during the first quarter of 2020, over 2/3 of multifamily permits were concentrated in high density areas. However, in the second quarter, the balance changed. the multifamily construction shifted somewhat to lower density markets, including the exurbs of large metro areas and the smaller metropolitan areas. So right now, 34% of multifamily construction takes place in lower density areas, and it is an increase from compared to a year ago. This here shows the breakdown of the multifamily buildings completed by units. In 2019, 50 plus units were over 50% of market share. And again, the impact of COVID, I think this could generate market share for smaller multifamily structures, including garden style and the low-rise buildings. They are the ones in the green and the red bars here. And probably a decline in 50 plus units in the next couple of years. Multifamily construction is twofold: built for rent and built for sale. So not a surprise here, built for rent dominates the multifamily market at 96%, and 4% is the condo. So during the third quarter of 2020, there were only 4,000 condo multifamily units were started, as opposed to 103,000 rental apartment units. And condo construction has been weak since the end of the Great Recession. We hear a lot about this single family built for rent, and it is elevated because of the housing affordability challenges, and we do expect it to rise over the next coming few years, but it still remains a small share of overall home building industry. So there were approximately 14,000 single family built for rent units started in the third quarter. This was 27% increase relative to the third quarter of last year, where there was only 11,000. So I talked a lot about multifamily. I just want to give you a quick glimpse on what our single family looks like. And just like the multifamily production index, the counterpart on the single family is the housing market index. So the housing market index gauges the builder sentiment in the single family homes. And again, this is an index, so above 50 means positive, below 50 means negative. And it's just, I think this here shows the resilience of housing. So the builder confidence increased to 90. It's an all-time high in the index of the 35-year history of the index. And the builders are saying they're seeing historic traffic numbers. And I think this is captured by the new home sales, where it has been consistently coming under 1 million. Or just above 1 million right now in the 3-month moving average. So because of this, we have revised our single family starts forecast. In April, our forecast was showing around 20% decline for single family starts. But the rally in the HMI and the resilience in housing and the importance of housing, I think, in this time period, we are now expecting a 9% increase for 2020. At 969,000 units, and in 2021 and in 2022, just to come under 1 million. So a slowdown for sure, but I think this is an incredible rebound of housing for this year for single family. So this is to show you where the residential fixed investment and non-residential fixed investments. So while multifamily market has some challenges in the next year or so, overall, we believe that the residential construction will recover a whole lot faster than non-residential. Like I said earlier, most of the sales are coming from houses that have not even been started. So this is the data to show you that. So they are consistent with the census estimates and NHB surveys that the builders are selling homes that have not even begun construction in great numbers. So what we are expecting is more building ahead. That means we need to figure out the lumber costs, the labor issues, and all the other issues, because if the building needs to continue to support housing demand. Finally, I do want to wrap everything together. Housing is a bright spot of the economy. Single family starts continue to expand into 2021 and 2022 at a slowing rate, just like I show you. Multifamily permits are down and construction declines in high density areas in 2021. Remodeling market continues to expand everybody wants to, make their home more comfortable. So we do expect the remodeling market to continue, and home prices growth continue because of the lack of supply, but will slow down as mortgage rates increase. And the price growth and the interest rate gains will price out some of the hot markets. And we do need to distinguish between temporary and permanent trends. So this wraps up my presentation, and I'm actually able to answer a few questions. If not, feel free to send me an email. This is my email address.
Danushka, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, Eric.
This is Eric. I have a question. I did want to note that on one of your earlier slides, Gerald asked Danushka for the housing ownership index, and I think it was where you're comparing Virginia to Richmond. How does Northern Virginia fare? So as you're thinking about that, and somebody else just asked if you could go back one slide to the summary slide, just so folks can kind of focus on that for a second.
This one. Yeah.
And why don't you go ahead and answer that one if you can, and then I've got one for you.
Yeah, I mean, Northern Virginia, when you compare to, Northern Virginia is, in the metropolitan area, is together with DC. So the housing affordability is actually really low in the area. So not a big surprise. But construction and I say in our area because I live right out of DC as well, it's very limited. The inventory is limited, so there's not much of construction happening. But if you go outside, I live on the Maryland side, and if you go towards, go up the corridor of 270, go closer to Frederick or beyond that, the construction is insane. And I think what that's doing is actually reducing affordability in those markets too. But yeah, so going back, Northern Virginia, definitely, but I can get you the exact numbers. Feel free to send me an email. I will find that out for you.
Okay, great. Well, I have a question, and I know you're focused on generally housing multifamily and single family, not necessarily on affordable. So this combined with the fact that you not only don't have a perfect crystal ball, but it's more like one of those snowflake balls that's been shaking up, trying to figure out what's going to come in the future. But there were a couple interesting trends. So for affordable housing, these projects usually get approved years before they actually close on the financing and start construction. And often when they're approved, it's because they were awarded public funds to make them financially feasible. And when they do that, they're usually indicating what their costs are. So their costs that are related to their financial approvals trail their closing by anywhere from 12 to 24 months. So for projects that were approved 2 years ago, what does it mean for them, given the kind of, I know it's a bright spot, but it's somewhat disturbing to see that lumber, labor, and lending all are going to make it more expensive to build anything, not to mention multifamily affordable housing, which probably has more regulations. It's probably on the extreme right side of your slides in terms of what percentage of the costs are driven by regulatory requirements. So with that all in mind, tell me, what do you see in your kind of snowflake shaken ball for these projects in the next few months that usually need to close in the next 6 months? What are they going to face in terms of the construction costs and uses side of their ledger?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly challenging. I think if somebody was looking at probably projects earlier this year to close at the end of the year, there's no way they could have seen the lumber prices are insane. So it is a huge challenge, and we are working, closely with regulators, essentially in the lumber industry, to bring the prices down. But I feel for the builders. I really feel for the builders. How can you plan ahead when the prices are so volatile? I think they're taking a huge risk when they plan for something 6 months or a year or 2 years ahead. Yeah, so we are, if we go by the futures market, the lumber prices should fall, but I'm not sure if it's going to fall that much if the demand is high and the price is driven up by the demand, and lending, it has to get less. The lending conditions have to improve, and the labor. All I can, at this point, what we are encouraging is if people are unemployed, looking for a job, please go into the construction industry because we need people, and the builders are willing to train and provide internships, apprenticeships. So we do need good people, capable people growing in the industry, but these are persisting issues for the construction sector. And I think this is going to be an issue in the next year or so, at least.
I think it's really helpful, and this is the type of information that everybody who's listening in is concerned about. And another kind of, maybe it's a murky crystal ball as well to ask you about, if you would indulge me. But and I know you pointed out different trends in new construction starts and how they often lag. The approvals that you see lag when they actually start construction, and the dynamics of younger folks moving into single family. And so for us, as a subset of multifamily, the affordable projects, the concern that we often have is if people are more and more moving into single family, which is a good thing, it means that a lot of lower income folks will be priced out of all of that housing. And then if multifamily starts, which span the gamut of different, market rate housing, if those are declining, it means that there's going to be more competition for what we call NOAs. These are affordable units that are not restricted to lower income and moderate income folks. So it suggests to me that there's also going to be increased demand for a limited supply of multifamily units in the immediate future. And we're already in a horrific affordable housing crunch. Is that just my paranoia, or does that seem to bear out in the numbers?
No, you're absolutely right. It's absolutely right. Actually, it is going to price out the lower income households. And this has definitely, if somebody can afford to go buy right now, they will. But unfortunately, this situation right now we are in, combined with, the unemployment and the fact that the stimulus, I'm not really sure what's going on with that right now, and the benefits, all over now. It's really unfortunate, and you're not paranoid at all, Eric. This is exactly what we are seeing. It's such an unfortunate situation and a very, very challenging to a lot of households right now.
Well, again, thank you, Danushka. Really appreciate your wisdom and breaking it down for all of us. I begged Danushka, if there were really sad or depressing slides, to put in photos of kittens or sunflowers or puppies, just to cheer us up a little bit. And I think it sounds like the slides are overall positive for the economy, but often that means it's negative or more challenging for affordable housing developers and the tenants that they serve. But again, Danushka Nandiakara, thank you very much for your wisdom. We are going to move on now, and thankfully Bree is going to kind of guide us through the rest of your day today and tomorrow, and kind of how it functions. And I did want to reiterate something that Brian said earlier, that Bree is really just been an absolute rock star for the Virginia Housing Alliance and for this Housing Credit Conference. And we're just immensely grateful for your skills and your demeanor, and please guide us through.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you to the committee for putting up with me and hounding them, the endless emails, and embracing me and my lack of knowledge for tax credit. They took the time to explain these things to me when I did not know, it being my first year with that alliance and my first year at this conference. Hopefully this platform is really easy for you all to use. You are just going to follow along in the agenda that is on the main screen, but also if you click on the toolbar on your left-hand side, you will always be able to access your agenda from there as well. Our next session is, we're running a little bit behind, but it will begin right after we end this. You will have to exit this meeting and join the next one. We also wanted to encourage you all to visit our exhibit hall, where some of our great sponsors have taken the time to put together information for you all. There is also a game in the exhibit hall. So we will be giving away a 250 gift card to the winner of that. You will need to go to the exhibit hall, click on the game, how to win. It will tell you the rules, and you'll just need to visit the booths, get some information, and good luck. The leaderboard will pop up, so everybody will see who's in the lead. You will get your time to shine, and we will announce the winners tomorrow. If you need help throughout the conference, feel free to use the email address that's actually updated or uploaded in the app, or you can always email us at hcc2020@gmail.com. So our next session will begin right after this one, after we exit this out. The panel is the state of the federal government and affordable housing. We have some great speakers over there. So thank you so much to you all for joining us for our first virtual conference. I hope it was okay for you all. We are recording the sessions to make them available for you all after the conference is over, and we will also provide any handouts that you all may want. And so if you want to go ahead and head over to the next session in your agenda, we will get started with that, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.